50 years ago, on April 30th, 1975, the North Vietnamese Army captured Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, bringing an end to the Vietnam War. Louisiana is home to one of the nation's largest populations of Vietnamese refugees who fled war-ravaged South Vietnam. The children of the Vietnam War are the last generation of memory keepers, navigating a complex legacy of family and political divisions and cultural assimilation. Here's how the anniversary is opening up conversations once considered unspeakable.
Buddhist monk Thich Dao Quang, that's his spiritual name, invites me to reflect on the ashes of Vietnamese ancestors that line the walls of the Appreciation Tower on the grounds of Tam Bao Temple. Many took their experiences in the Vietnam War to their graves. As a child during the Vietnam War, Thich Dao Quang belongs to the generation that serves as the last memory keepers of real-life accounts. In the meditation temple, we sit barefoot and cross-legged as a sign of respect to talk about how the Vietnam War shaped the lives and experiences of Vietnamese immigrants.
We was born during the Vietnam War. We grew up after the Vietnam War ended. So we have to deal with so many social issues. That's a discrimination between old society, the people who belong to the old government, new government. And we have to deal with the poverty. My generation have a lot of impact from the war in terms of we're confusion. We don't know how to adapt into the new environment. And we also receive the information only one side, but not the other side.
Thich Dao Quang serves as the abbot of the Buddhist temple in Baton Rouge and holds a PhD in psychology that informs his mental wellness teachings and counseling. He is a Vietnamese-American success story, born in 1968 in a small village in the center of Vietnam. His dad was a police officer working with South Vietnamese fighters and the CIA.
Right after Vietnam War ended, I was 7 years old. I remember my mom told me that, and my father was invited to go into the re-education camp, to stay there, to learn something new from the government. It could be few weeks or few months, but unfortunately, later on, it's become 7.5 years.
And the re-education camp was a nice word for prison.
Right, yeah.
His father was released from prison in 1982 and returned to his village. Thich Dao Quang was only one of 2 villagers selected by the communist government to attend high school. In 1989, he applied on behalf of his entire family, his parents and 8 siblings, to immigrate to the United States. The Vietnam War left many Vietnamese families divided, dislocated, and distrustful of each other and the outside world.
When we first spoke, I asked if you could reach out to your congregation to see if anybody else would share their stories. And the response was apprehension for, number 1, the language barrier, but number 2, fear, because they have family members in Vietnam, fear of retribution, fear of political turmoil. Tell me about that.
This is very complicated issue. Most Vietnamese people in my generation, they still have a contact, a relationship with people in Vietnam. This could be the parents, immediate family members or friends. They don't want to share their true feelings because they do not want to create the conflict even within the family. Different people in the same family, they have a different perspective because they receive the different information. This is also the complicated issue within the Vietnamese community.
As of 2020, nearly 33,000 people of Vietnamese descent resided in Louisiana, making them one of the largest Asian American communities in the state. Many made their homes in the New Orleans area, concentrating in New Orleans East and the West Bank.
Welcome, Karen, to Making It Home from Vietnam to New Orleans.
The Historic New Orleans collection is honoring the fall of Saigon's 50th anniversary with an exhibit chronicling New Orleans Vietnamese communities.
Many of the people that we interviewed served in the South Vietnamese military, and they lent their military uniforms to us to include in the exhibition. Many people don't realize that the first public announcement that we were finished with the war in Vietnam came here in New Orleans when President Ford gave the commencement address at Tulane University. And so he announced just a week before the fall of Saigon that the United States was done with the war in Vietnam. It was devastating to the South Vietnamese. It was an end to their war, an end to their cause. And it triggered a huge humanitarian crisis as people fled the country.
On April 30th, 1975, the North Vietnamese Army captured the capital of South Vietnam, marking the end of the Vietnam War. In the final days, the U.S. airlifted more than 7,000 people, both Americans and South Vietnamese, from rooftops in Saigon, including the U.S. Embassy. Thousands more fled by boat, becoming part of the wave of the boat people.
When the fall of Saigon happened, we had a really well-developed system for the intake of refugees, and then also a lot of Cuban refugees who were anxious to help the Vietnamese. They saw something in their experience that was connected to their own, that they were fleeing a communist country and finding refuge here in the United States.
The majority of New Orleans' Vietnamese population practiced Catholicism and founded the Mary Queen of Vietnam Church as the community pillar.
I think a large percentage of those who got out of the country were fishermen because they needed a boat to escape, of course. But when they got here, I think there was a desire to recreate the lives they had back in Vietnam. And so, of course, fishing was something they gravitated to, and they knew boat building skills, and they were also very much into agriculture. And so around the apartment complex, they initially just started planting gardens in every available piece of land.
The fall of Saigon created one of the largest diasporas in modern history. The United States formally normalized diplomatic relationships with Vietnam in 1995, 20 years after the fall of Saigon.
I think this exhibit is a tribute to that first generation of what they built here, like what they had gone through in their lives, what they came here to do, and then building a community and a home for their children and grandchildren.
It's been 50 years since the fall of Saigon. What do you want people to understand about the Vietnamese experience?
I wish and I hope for Vietnamese people in Vietnam or Vietnamese American people in America just sit down like this, just open up and share your experience. We cannot change the past. We cannot change the history. But if we open our mind, open our heart to learn from each other, to learn from history, so that we can learn so many valuable lessons for a better future.